All right, here we are. Once again, back at the bench. Still October. Got my trusty penguins. Guy just dove off over there. And we have this nice stone. You saw this out, right? You're saying you don't shave with that, do you? No, it's not some kind of crazy Sorry. What this is some kind of knife used in, I think, maybe the shoemaking industry or something. I don't know. It's something to do with the leather world. I know that. A buddy of mine at work many years ago, he gave me a few of them. So I use them here for a number of things. I have three. One has a silly sharp edge. This has a more utilitarian edge. The other is whatever. I don't even know if it has an edge. But anyway, I have this out for basically a reason that I'll get to in a minute. The razor thing that I'll be kicking around here is this lovely letter opener from China, the gold dollar. The scales on this are self-destructing. They're warping like on their own. Every time I pick this up, the scales are like in a different. They're contorting. I don't really care about this blade because I've literally beat the crap out of it honing, so I keep it around for demoing. I'm showing off a stone. I'm not showing off a honing style. I don't care what comes out of the edge from me running it over this stone today. That's not my intent. Don't care. So this is a perfect prop. I have another blade here that I've been thinking about honing today. I just actually refurbed this a little bit. If you follow my Instagram, I did a live Instagram video where I unscaled it, pulled the pin, and that's what I was showing, was the process of me pulling the pin on this thing. And then after that, I kind of got into a mood and said, you know what, let me sand down the scales. I hit it with a coat of clear from a rattle can. The pivot holes were a challenge on this razor. I know this has nothing to do with this stone, but I'm here. The wood had compressed and had gone concave in there. It was like really pushed in. So I'm guessing that the wood is either really soft or it got really wet or something else went on. So I did an experiment and I sanded it out a little bit, got the fresh wood, and then I put in some plumber's putty and made it flush, sanded it down, and now that I've hit it with clear, it's kind of like sealed in there. I want to see if this works. I guess it's a little sketchy because, it's the pivot, but the way I see it, the worst thing that's going to happen is nothing really, but I guess it could get loose or something. I don't know. I have to tighten it up. Last night, the tension on this was good, and that could be an issue of the wood here. Or it just could be like it's settled down. I don't know yet. But I don't like blades that are this loose. It drives me nuts. It's a 6/8. You know what I mean? It shouldn't be that loose. If you have a 9/8 and it's closing, okay, it's got like a pound of steel. Getting tension on that is a trick into itself. But this should be all right. So I'm going to put this on my little anvil and tap it down later and get to it. And then I'll probably be honing it. And I thought about using it for this demo, but because it's so loose and I'm not gonna. All right, I'm gonna stick to this, the gold dollar. I know people like them. I don't. I think they're a waste of time. I have a couple that I've already wasted my time on to make them shave, and I can make it shave. It's just that they don't shave well for long, so I have to constantly stay on top of the edge, and to me that's a pain in the ass. Anyway, so we have this. What is this? It's pretty, right? Can you see the marks in the stone here? See the way they're scooped out? That is from cutting this stone with a very small hand axe, okay? And you've probably seen me or heard me mention that with Chu, right? Chu Nagura. So here's my large sword quality Chu Nagura Do, and you can see it has the same type of scoop marks on the side. That's made, okay, by cutting this stone by hand with a hatchet. That's old school. You don't see a lot of stones cut like this anymore, even though that is the tradition. There's only so much of this stone left, and cutting it with a saw will preserve that resource a little bit. But it isn't all the piece. This is, I was told, well over 100 years old. Asano stamps were not used until, I believe, around the 60s. So this stone was cut way back when, okay? Way back when. Pre-1900, most likely. And later on brought to the Asano camp to be graded, evaluated, and subsequently stamped. Anyway, my point was to show you the comparison of the stones. You can see, that the cutting style is the same. Anywho, that doesn't really affect the honing, it's just the aesthetic. And with things Japanese, especially traditional types of Japanese items, those aesthetics are very important. They may not be important to everyone who's using this to hone a razor, but, it is to me, and that is that. Now, you're asking, where are the stamps, Keith? There's no stamps. See? No stamps. So what is this? What is this big block of stone? Is this some alien Nagura? No, this is actually Chu Nagura Do. All right, for a sword polisher, this is the stone that precedes Chu Nagura Do. Now, there's there are some buzzes going on out there in the world of Nagura and JNats. There's a lot of people becoming instant vendors. They got like 5 minutes of honing time. They bought 3 stones. They've studied A-Frame Tokyo's website, and now they're experts. They know everything. Okay? And that's fine, whatever. It's just honing. But at the same time, what comes from that type of arrogant ignorance, I guess, is what it is. There's a lot of misinformation. So I just want to throw some things out there. You can think about them. You can research them. As you've seen, you have a whole lot of people that they're like instant genius. You have expertitis pops up. And I just want to clear the air. I'm not an expert. I know more than the average bear. I'm deeply involved in this stuff, and I'm constantly honing my knowledge base and following up on things. I don't stay static or stagnant. Anyway, it's like Iwasaki's honing guide. This just became a bone of contention for a bunch of people. Again, for whatever number of time. And it happens often with that thing, and I've read that booklet 15 times, and in the last 5 times I really got in touch with something that went on there. And I'm just making an analogy, okay? So then on a forum, somebody was talking about Iwasaki's writing about going sideways when you're honing and using it to deburr the edge. But that's not what Iwasaki was doing when he wrote about going sideways. Okay? Then somebody else came up and said it was, that's just a nuance. No, it's not a freaking nuance. It's the reason for the existence of the concept. Okay? The concept is he felt that people were shaving on burrs. So he found that taking the honed edge to a paddle with an abrasive compound. This is my blue compound. I don't have felt, and I don't use Crocs regularly, so I'm sorry I can't show that right now. But Iwasaki used Crocs, and he used the compression of the substrate and the abrasive power of the chromium oxide to remove the burr, and then, he recognized on his microscope that the bevel had a slight convex nature to it, so he went back to the stone and went like this for a long time, in a very exacting, very precision type of style execution on both sides, to remove that convex bevel and make it flat again. The reason I go back and reread things is so I can really get into it and really digest it, because the first time I read that, I read that whole part about going back and forth completely differently, and it took me until now to just sit down and focus on it to grasp the concept, because you know what happens, you read stuff and then you think about it, and then your mind plays tricks on you and you come up with other meanings, and then whatever, and then all of a sudden you're doing stuff and you're trying to say, this is you know, whatever. I got this from Iwasaki. No, you didn't get this from Iwasaki. Someone on the internet did a video and said he's doing this to deburr. I don't know. You know, it's like if that's working for you, fine. I don't care what kind of stroke you use when you hone or on what stone or whatever. You can use films, you can use stones, you can do whatever. But the going back and forth thing to deburr, I mean, is that really any different than doing circles? Circles are certainly not an Iwasaki-based thing, you know. But I think basically the concept of doing circles certainly applies to the concept of going sideways to deburr. In my world, just X strokes actually does this fine. And yes, I have on occasion just done this very light thing over here. And, you know, I realized at one point that this had nothing to do with what Iwasaki was doing. So my point of that entire tirade is that you got to stay fresh, you got to stay in it, you got to keep studying, you got to keep learning. Here we are, right? We have this nice hunk of Chu Nagura. So what is Chu? Okay, so you got people out there telling other people what Chu is and what Chu is not. Anyway, so this person in question, he's saying that Atsu is Chu. You know, and nobody is challenging that. And you know, they just keep saying, oh, the guy knows his way around a Kamisori. He knows J-Nats. Well, he knows J-Nats, okay? And he's saying that Chu is Atsu, or Atsu is Chu. Okay, let's look at did anybody read any of the books on sword polishing, Hanami, any of that? Okay, you go through the stones, you see Chu is the last step. Okay, it is the last step before you move to a Chu Nagura Do. That tells you Chu is fine. Now study Mikao and Nagura. Atsu and Ban, both almost not around anymore, are very coarse. What were they used for? Scissors, yard tools, scythes, farm tools. So you're trying to tell me that a piece of Chu is the same as Atsu, which is used for farm tools. Yet the typical sword progression is Chu Nagura, then Koma Nagura Do. Actually, if you do a lot of digging, you'll find that Chu, real Chu, sword grade, right, is very, very, very close to Koma Nagura. At that stage in polishing, what you're doing, really, okay, is making a minuscule jump in particle size, okay, to completely eliminate all of your scratch works, all of your scratch marks. From Chu, you move into Koma, but it's a minuscule move, okay, and it's very fast, and it moves very quickly, and it just takes all that scratch work from the previous stone down. And if you work it, it has a tendency to become finer and finer and finer and leave a very deep haze that's a good setup for the next level of polish, which is really only polish. I don't know how much sharpness you're adding with the fingerstone stage, but, you know, that's a discussion for another video, I suppose. So anyway, yeah, so you got people talking about Chu. They got people talking about Chu as though it's a negative thing, or they're selling stones and they're calling it Chu when basically it's just white crap. You have sellers out there, you got people on eBay, you got all kinds of stuff going on. People, oh, Chu this, Chu that, Chu the other thing. People using Chu for all types of reasons. And I guess at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter very much. Okay? What people are sharpening their steak knives on. Okay? But I think if you're into the aesthetic, you should know what you're talking about and not dismiss. I think if you're into the aesthetic, you should not dismiss the existing knowledge and intent. Like with Iwasaki, you don't want to completely ignore what he's doing and just take his sideways motion and call it whatever, because you're obviating the guy's original intention. And, you know, not for nothing, the guy was in this game long before everyone who's on the internet now was, and he was trying to make a point, and that point is not only valid, it's really important. So to just take the whole sideways thing and turn it into like, oh, well, I'm going sideways, so I'm Iwasaki now. It's like, you're being rude, okay? and you may not intend to be rude, but that's the bottom line, all right? And we make mistakes. I made mistakes early on. I took on a lot of information from a lot of people I never should have. I passed it around because I thought they knew what they were talking about. I did those things. We learn, we grow. Okay. I look back on some things I thought and said. I'm like, geez, that was stupid. Okay. I'll go crying about it on shaving forums. Okay. Anyway, so this is real Chu. Where did it come from? Well, I'll get into that in another video. Okay, but Chu comes from a lot of places, and not all Nagura comes from Aichi or Mikawa. Okay, the stuff we hone with, the stamps, the sano, that comes from one location. Okay, but all across Japan, there are layers of stone that can be used as Nagura. All right. The stuff that we know as Asano stamped, okay, and you'll notice that they don't have one stamped Chu, okay. That location was chosen because the stones from there were stratified in a way that was identifiable and it was consistent. Stones from other part of the country aren't like that, or nearly as presented as well, or as the same quality. Okay, that's why Iwasaki chose that location. Well, it's one of the reasons, and it's a pretty big one. Okay, just saying that Nagura came from Aichi or Mikawa, I mean, it's a big place. It doesn't mean anything. If it came from the location that's stamped, then that means something. Chu, on the other hand, comes from a couple of locations. All right, and there are stones used by sharpeners, polishers, that aren't stamped and didn't come from the same location we got our coma from. All right. Iwasaki's intent was to have a reliable, regular source that's consistent. A polisher knows this stuff. He can pick the stone up and smell it and know whether or not it's going to be doing what he wants it to do. Most guys honing a razor aren't in that position. Okay. Reason being is a razor or utility tool like this is a couple of dollars, whereas a historical Nihanto is, you $250,000, $1 million sometimes. Those guys really need to be, on another plane with their stones. Anyway, you see I'm using a decent amount of pressure here, and this steel isn't particularly hard, and you see I'm not getting much swarf. I'm getting some, not a lot. Why? Because this is a very hard, very fine stone. Okay? This is real Chu. This is real Chu Nagura Do. This is sword grade Chu. And even though sword grade is technically a term owned by, Mr. Sakamoto and the people who have the Asano stamps now, I use it loosely in this discussion so you know what I'm talking about. I have two other pieces of Chu here. All right. These come from the same location. You see this one is striped. This stone is heavily striped. This one is pure white. People always want to know is which one is harder. You can have super hard white, you can have super hard striped, you can have super soft striped, and you can have super soft white. Depends on where it came from. All right. When you get to Chu, it's no longer about Asano stamps. It becomes a matter of, is this the right stone? What is it doing? How do I use it? So I just want to take the Chu out and show it to you. What do I use it for? Well, I actually relegate this stuff to cutlery most of the time. You can see I'm like running this blade on it. I'm using a little bit, but not a lot of pressure, but I have more on here than I would use with a lot of things. And the edge on this particular knife isn't really, it doesn't have to be, it just has to be sharp. It doesn't have to be smooth. I don't shave with it. All right. And this is kind of what I do with this stuff. Now I have a million knives around the house, and I use this for a lot of them, or I use stones like this. I usually have a few pieces of this kicking around. I just don't show them off all the time because it's not really razor-centric. For kitchen cutlery, this is really badass. Okay, if you like, the particles in this cut well. They cut very well. So let's just say you have like this beautiful Diba or Gyuto, and you have a very, very sharp edge and it falls off a little bit on you, you can come right onto this stone, even though this is very fine. It's not going to repair a chip or anything, but you can come in and you can really bring it back. You'll have to put a little work into it. It's not going to happen ABC 1, 2, 3 LMNOP. You're going to have to put some time on the stone, especially if you have something that's like Rockwell, like 62.3. All right. If you have Western blades like, I don't know, Wusthof or something, or Henkel's, even the top end of those lines, it's still a little bit softer. They're stainless and what have you, and so that's going to go a little bit more quickly. Usually, you have to be very careful. I find that the stainless has a tendency to get convex very fast on the Henkels. I don't know why. Maybe it's me. Maybe my technique sucks. I don't know what it is, to be honest. But yeah, this is good stuff for cutlery. Now, do I use it for razors? Sure. I'll use these Nagura on a base stone in lieu of, if I'm having trouble with a Majiro or a Tenju, or maybe even a Koma, and I say trouble like I'm not getting where I want to. It doesn't mean like I'm stalwarted. But if I feel like I'm missing, then I'll jump in and I'll grab this, and maybe just my guts are telling me to do it. I'll grab one of the two and I'll throw it down on the stone and make a paste and like get busy, right? So I'll do that. I won't hone a razor on this all too often, but there are times when I do use these Nagura bench stones. And another term for these, Nakato, mid-range, right? So, the gray on here you see is left over from the knife. The feeling on this is hard. This is hard like that comber I showed you was hard. It cuts steel very well, but it's an upper mid-range. It's not really, it's not close to Botan at all. Okay, it's never going to do work like Botan. It's really going to do mid-range, maybe upper mid-range is really how you want to look at it. Where, Tashima Black Nagura, right? Same thing, upper mid-range. But this is a different particle. So you're going to get a different type of action. I feel like the particles in these Nagura break down better than the Black Nagura. I don't know if better is the right word, but break down further, where I think the TBN just kind of peters out, just like pump, and then that's it. You're not going to go further. Where with this stuff, if it were possible to keep the stone from getting soft from having water on it, I think you'd be able to progress more. And certainly you can progress further by using slurry from one of these on top of a hard Hanyama based stone, like, finishing stone, like a regular Nagura progression. Okay? So anyway, this is Chu. Real Chu is good stone. It's a very good stone. It's high quality stone. You look in woodworking catalogs and you see something called Chu and it's like really cheap. It's not Chu. It's just some errant piece of rock that is formed into a Nagura, and it may work. It may do something for you. The hell, $10? Buy it. Play with it. All right? But if it's soft and not really really fine for a Nagura, then it's not Chu. All right? I think it's time that, people really took a look at what we're saying about things and how we're referring to things and making sure we don't dilute messages. We don't want to dilute Iwasaki's message in his booklet. Right, wrong, or indifferent, however you feel about it, it's the guy's work and leave it alone. Just for shits and giggles, I have a ZY and I did a finishing thing using this back and forth thing that's being touted as burr removal. First of all, I got to tell you, I don't get burrs. My burrs are removed in X strokes as I progress the way normal sharpening would. So when I get to the end, I don't need to do this. But anyway, so I did it, and then I looked at it on a scope, and all I did was have really screwed up scratch patterns. The blade shaved okay, but I actually think it shaved marginally worse than it did before I did that. So anyway, this is Chu. Chu is good stuff. You can use it for honing razors. If you want to, I would suggest trying Nagura first on a base stone before you go and buy one of these. This quality stone is not inexpensive. It's not in the price range of that Colma I showed you, but it's still not a cheap investment. Now, you can find blocks of Chu out there. I've seen them, or Mystery Nagura. I've seen vendors selling them. They're not stamped, and they have all sorts of mystery terminology attached to it. And if you have money to burn, you want to take a shot, fine. But I'm telling you, this level Chu is not that easy to get. It does cost a decent buck, and you kind of have to really want to be into it. You have to really have that thing with sharpening that makes you want to try another stone that's in the same zone. I love mid-range, okay? So stuff like this is, I'm all over it. I get it 1 or 2 a year, and I mess with them, and I usually wind up selling them because I have a full set of Mikawashiro Nagura, Asano stamped, Botan, Tenju, Majiro, Colma. I have that, okay? This is like so superfluous to me, it's not funny. But I can't not buy it because they're gorgeous and they're fun, and I like experiencing them, and it helps me grow and understand to use a different stone. It helps me get there. So anyway, so this is going to wind up in Etsy sooner or later. A couple of people saw it on Instagram, and they were like, immediately, boom, when's that going in the store? They know the deal. Anyway, so that's all I got for right now. Let me wipe my hands off before I handle my penguins. My buddy James, you all know James, he just recently mentioned that he thinks it's time that the penguins have names. They always had names. But I'm not going to tell you right now what they are. I'm going to make you hang out and watch another video or two before I explain that. But anyway, they have names, James. But it's cool. Thanks. Thank you, James, for supporting my channel and my Facebook and everything else. James has been a good guy. He's been a member of the community for a long time. And while we haven't always seen eye to eye, that's actually a healthy thing. Okay, if you find yourself agreeing with somebody all the time on everything, you got to check that. I mean, it's possible, but it's rare. Right, so penguins out for the final shot. Put them up here. Remember, okay, it's honing, man. It's just honing. That's all we're doing. We're sharpening steel on rocks. Anyway, keep it fun. Always have fun. Get out there, do some honing, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care. See you later.